So at this point, Daisy starts crying, and she confesses. She says, "I did love him once, but I loved you too." Um, and Gatsby just can't believe it. Um, and Tom kind of tries to rub salt into the wound. He says, "Even that's a lie. She didn't know you were alive. Why? There are things between Daisy and me that you'll never know, things that neither of us can forget." And this really, really hurts Gatsby. Then he wants to speak to Daisy alone. And Daisy says, "Even alone, I can't say I never loved Tom. It wouldn't be true." Um, and then Tom agrees with her, and then she says to him and asks her, "As if it mattered to you." And then Tom turns and says, he comes up with his next card. "Of course it matters. I'm going to take better care of you from now on." And then Gatsby gets nervous and says, "No, you're not going to take care of her anymore." "I'm not," says Tom. "Why is that?" And then Gatsby says, "Daisy's leaving you." And Tom basically just says nonsense. And then she says, "I am though." Uh, and then Tom starts to get very angry and says, "She's not leaving me. Certainly not for a common swindler who'd have to steal the ring he put on her finger." A swindler is a person who tricks people into giving money. To swindle is to deceive someone into giving money. Um, and then Daisy gets very distressed, and she says, "Let's go out." And then Tom continues, "Who are you anyhow? You're one of that bunch that hangs around Mayor Wolfsheim, and that much I happen to know. I've made a little investigation into your affairs, and I'll carry it further tomorrow." Gatsby stays calm, says, "You can suit yourself about that." And then Tom, he's still got more cards, okay? "I found out what your drugstores were." And then he tells everybody, "He and this Wolfsheim brought up a lot of side street drugstores here and in Chicago and sold grain alcohol over the counter. That's one of his little stunts. I picked him for a bootlegger the first time I saw him, and I wasn't far wrong." So yes, it is correct that he has a chain of drugstores, but his drugstores they're a front for bootlegging, which is selling legal grain alcohol. um, and Gatsby is still very polite about it. He says, "I guess your friend Walter Chase wasn't too proud to come in on it because he knows who was investigating him." So just to remind you, Walter Chase is a friend of Nick's, who's an investment banker, and he lost money, a lot of money, at Gatsby's roulette tables. "And you left him in the lurch, didn't you?" goes Tom. "You let him go to jail for a month over in New Jersey. God, you ought to hear Walter on the subject of you." So Walter is obviously somebody who doesn't like Gatsby. Um, And Gatsby says, "He came to us dead broke," meaning he came to us without money. "He was very glad to pick up some money, old sport." "Don't you call me old sport," cried Tom. Um, "Walter would have you up on the betting laws too, but Wolfsheim scared him out into shutting his mouth." So Walter could have been able to tell the police about Gatsby's illegal activities, but Wolfsheim threatened him, and now he's going to be quiet. Do you remember, we go back to when they're sitting in the restaurant and Wolfsheim's talking about, "Oh, he'll never say anything now." That was talking about this Walter character. So then Gatsby has the same look that he had when Tom was hinting about the gas, being able to get all sorts of things from drugstores. Um, and then Tom still continues. "That drugstore business was just small change," meaning Oh, your drugstore business is not the main part. That's not where you get your main income from. But you've got something on now that Walter's afraid to tell me about. So obviously he's dealing something really illegal. And Gatsby's response is to take on another look that Nick sees is something similar to a look as if he had killed a man. Do you remember they talked at the party that he killed a man? There's something quite dangerous about Gatsby, that something that he does which is beyond all this other stuff. In the meantime, Jordan's kind of zoned out, um, and Daisy's terrified. And then the moment passes, and Gatsby doesn't admit to anything. And he begins to talk to Daisy, and he's denying everything and defending his name against accusations that had not been made. But with every word, she was drawing further and further into herself. Something has changed, right? So something that Tom said has changed her attitude. So he gave that up, and only the dead dream fought on. The dead dream, remember? As the afternoon slipped by. And it is a dead dream. The dream is no longer. Trying to touch what was no longer tangible, struggling unhappily, undespairingly towards the lost voice across the room. And again, she begs to go. Please, Tom, I can't stand this anymore. Um, and and it says her frightened eyes told that whatever intentions, whatever courage she had had, were definitely gone. So she no longer has the courage to leave Tom. And Tom says, you two start on home in Gatsby's car, which is very interesting. Tom now feels that he's reassured. He has completely won. He's pulled out all the cards. Gatsby has no way to defend himself. He just thought that there would be this big declaration that Daisy would say she loves him. She never loved Tom. He couldn't get that one out. And now Tom really doesn't have anything to worry about. But he does that. He shows his power by saying, "Oh, you two, you can be together. It doesn't make a difference to me because Daisy's mine. So, even if you go off in the car, nothing's going to happen." And so they go in Gatsby's car, and this is what the moment when everything changes. And he says, go on, he won't annoy you. I think he realizes that his presumptuous little flirtation is over. A flirtation is when you flirt with somebody, it means that you sort of start with them, but it's nothing very serious. And presumptuous means that he takes things for granted. So he's very superior about the whole thing. And they go out. And in the meantime, Tom gets up and he unwraps a bottle of whiskey and offers people. And then Nick just remembers that it's his birthday. I just remembered that today is my birthday. What a day. Um, and this is very, very, this rings very true. Before me stretched the pretentious, menacing road of a new decade. Okay? And it's interesting because he's going into his 30s and America is going into its 30s. And the 30s were nothing like the 20s. They were a completely different age and much, much more difficult. So 7 in the evening, they get into Tom's car and they start for Long Island. And Tom's in a good mood, and Nick's kind of out of it. He's so much has gone on, he can't handle it anymore. So once again, Nick gets a bit depressed about the fact that he's turning 30, but he's reminded that at least he's got Jordan with him, and Jordan, unlike Daisy, was too wise ever to carry well-forgotten dreams from age to age. There's something smart about her that she's not going to go chasing after things in the past. So then they carry on, So now we're kind of moving forward in time and back in time because we are going to a completely different topic. We're talking about the young Greek Michaelis who ran the coffee joint beside the ash heaps. Okay, remember the Valley of the Ashes? He was the principal witness at the inquest. An inquest is what you have when you have an investigation after a crime or something that has happened that the police have been involved. So he's telling over his story. So it's kind of we're going forward and then we're going back, if you understand what I mean. Because now he's telling a story of something that happened just after um, Gatsby and Daisy left New York City. So he'd slept until 5, and then he goes to find. He finds George Wilson, my Myrtle's husband, sick in his office, and he's shaking, and he won't go to bed because he wants to keep his business open, and he hears like a lot of noise. While his neighbor was trying to persuade him, a violent racket broke out overhead. He was trying to persuade him to go to bed, and there's a lot of noise coming from the upstairs apartment. And then Wilson explains that he's taken Myrtle and he's locked her up, and he's locking her up until the day after tomorrow, and then they're going to move away because he's discovered that she's having some kind of an affair, and he wants to move them out. And Michaelis, yeah, he's Greek. Michaelis is really surprised because he he didn't think that Wilson was capable of such a statement, um, and he thought he was kind of like a passive person who wouldn't do such a thing. Um, he thought that he was his wife's man and not his own. And he tries to find out what happened, but Wilson won't tell him, and he still just starts looking at him weirdly. Um, and then the workmen come to his restaurant, and he gets he gets away from Wilson. And then he comes back in to check up on him because remember, Mr. Wilson's sick. And he hears Mrs. Wilson crying, and he hears her say, "Beat me, throw me down, and beat me, you dirty little coward." In a way, she is interesting. She wants a man who's going to sort of take possession of her and be like violent towards her, just like Tom. She wants Wilson to be more of a man, meaning being nasty and treating her badly. Very strange. And then she manages to get out. Okay? A moment later, she rushed out into the dusk, waving her hands and shouting. Before he could move from his door, the business was over. And as a reader, you're supposed to say, what business was over? And now we're going to find out what was over. The death cart, as the newspapers called it, didn't stop. It came out of the gathering darkness, wavering tragically for a moment and then disappearing around the next bend. Michaelis wasn't even sure of its colour. He told the first policeman, it was light green. The other car, the one going towards New York, came to rest 100 yards beyond, and its driver hurried back to where Myrtle Wilson, her life violently extinguished, knelt in the road and mingled her thick, dark blood with the dust. Okay, so the driver that knocks Myrtle over doesn't stop, but the car that was coming in the opposite direction that their car swerved out of the way to avoid does stop, but it's obviously too late. Myrtle Wilson's dead. And there's like a very kind of nasty description that when they go there, her breast was swinging loose like a flap. I mean, she is well and truly dead, but in a really awful way. And I think then we really come to we we understand, where all this is going to, this recklessness, this living in the moment, the lomo, the wealth, all of it only leads to one place, which is a really, really terrible place. I mean, she gets run over by Gatsby's beautiful, car, which must be the envy. Rolls Royce, a car must be the envy of everybody else, and death just looks awful. It looks terrible. Um, and it's also like a metaphor for the fact that the wealthy they literally can just take anything and just run over it. with their power, with their money. And that is the fate of poor Myrtle. I'm not saying that I think Gatsby's bad or good. I think it's just a statement of where people are ranked and what they can do in the position that they're in. That she runs into streets, she's completely vulnerable. She's a nobody, she's a nothing. And then there are forces much more powerful than her that can just take her life. Now Nick and Tom and Jordan are approaching the scene, and Tom's first reaction, Tom doesn't know what's gone on yet. Tom's first reaction is, Rick, that's good. Wilson will have some business a little business at last. Oh yeah, if the cars are, he's not interested in what happened to the people, but Wilson will get money from fixing the cars that were involved in the car accident. That is his reaction, okay? He slows down. He doesn't have any intention of stopping, and then, but then he realizes something serious has gone on. So he says, "We'll take a look." And then the scene is absolutely terrible. I became aware of a hollow, wailing sound which issued incessantly from the garage. That is Mr. Wilson crying, screaming. A sound which, as soon as we got out of the coupe, walked towards the door, resolved itself into words. "Oh my God!" uttered over and over in a gasping moan. "There's some bad trouble here," said Tom excitedly. Yeah, so he's kind of, he's interested in anything that will take away the boredom. There's some drama going on. This is great. This is what wealthy, bored people want. And then he sees what he doesn't want to see. He sees Myrtle's body wrapped in a blanket. And Tom is completely shocked. So the policeman is trying to take down spelling of a name, and it is the first spelling of Michaelis' name. But the interesting thing is, this is something I read up. I'm like, why is he spelling out his name? Who cares? And it's Mavrog. And actually Mavrog means is referring to something that not Gatsby, Fitzgerald has in another novel, which is Mavro de Giulio, which is an Irish for which is Mavro Gogugio, which is Irish for my sorrow forever, because this is the sorrow of poor Myrtle who was killed. Interesting. Fun fact. Doesn't really help us understand the novel, but it's very cute. And Tom is completely dazed. He's like, how was she killed? And they tell her that she ran out into the road. Son of a bitch didn't even stop his car. There was 2 cars, said Michaelis. One coming, one going. See? Going where? Asked the policeman keenly. One going each way. Well, she ran out there, and the one coming from New York knocked right down into her, going 30, 40 miles an hour. So the policeman's taking down all the information. And then finally, a black man comes along, and he tells the car. He identifies the color of the car, which will eventually identify it as Gatsby's car. It was a yellow car, he said. Big yellow car, new. So the guy didn't see the accident, he said, but he saw the car was going very fast. It was going at 50 or 60 miles an hour.